The morning air bit through Daniel's thin jacket as he stood across the street from the old brick building. His hand was deep in his pocket, fingers wrapped around a crumpled $20 bill. That piece of paper represented everything he had left in this world. Not everything he owned, just everything he had in actual money that could buy him food or pay for anything. He'd been standing there for almost 10 minutes now, just staring at the building. People walked past him on the sidewalk, bundled up in their warm coats, heading to their jobs, living their normal lives. Daniel wondered if any of them had ever been where he was right now. Down to their last $20 with no idea where the next meal would come from. The sign above the entrance read, Henderson Trade School. Below it, in smaller letters, Welding Certification Program. Daniel had walked past this building 100 times over the years, never thinking he'd be desperate enough to walk through those doors. But here he was, 3 months without work, bills piling up like snow in a Chicago winter, and his little sister counting on him to help with her college expenses. He couldn't let her down. Their parents were gone, and he was all she had. Taking a deep breath, Daniel crossed the street. The building looked like it had been there forever. The bricks were dark with age, and the windows were the old kind with metal frames. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean. That had to mean something, right? Inside, the hallway smelled like floor wax and old paint. His shoes squeaked on the polished linoleum as he walked toward a desk with a sign that said, Registration. A woman in her 50s sat behind it, wearing glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up from her computer and smiled. Can I help you? Daniel cleared his throat. I'm here to sign up for the welding program. Wonderful. She pulled out a form and slid it across the desk with a pen. Have you welded before? My dad taught me some basics when I was a kid, Daniel said, picking up the pen. His hand shook slightly as he started filling out the form. He hoped she didn't notice. He worked at the steel mill before it closed down. Well, you'll be in good hands here. Our instructors are excellent. She typed something into her computer. The enrollment fee is $15. We keep it low because Mr. Henderson believes everyone deserves a chance to learn a trade. $15. He had 20. That would leave him with $5 to last until what? He didn't even know. But what choice did he have? Without this certification, he couldn't get the welding jobs that were actually hiring. Without a job, he'd lose his apartment in 2 weeks. He'd end up on the street, and his sister would have to drop out of school to take care of herself. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out the 20. It was wrinkled and soft from being folded and unfolded so many times. He'd been carrying it for 3 days now, debating whether to spend it on food or save it for something important. This was important. This was his future. As he smoothed the bill out on the desk, trying to make it look less pathetic, something splashed near his feet. Water spread across the floor, soaking into his worn sneakers. Daniel jumped back. Oh, Lord, I'm so sorry. An older man in coveralls stood there with a mop and a bucket that had tipped on its side. Water was still spreading across the floor. The man had to be at least 65, maybe 70. His hair was gray at the temples, and his dark skin had the kind of lines that come from years of hard work. He grabbed the bucket quickly and started mopping up the water. I'm so clumsy today, the old man said, genuine distress in his voice. Got your shoes all wet. I'm real sorry about that. It's okay, Daniel said quickly. Don't worry about it. Accidents happen. Still, I should watch where I'm going. The old man kept mopping, working fast to clean up the mess. These old eyes aren't what they used to be. The woman behind the desk had already handed Daniel his change, $5 bills that felt impossibly thin in his hand. She was processing his enrollment, typing away at her computer. Daniel stepped aside to let the janitor finish cleaning, trying to squeeze water out of his socks without being too obvious about it. You signing up for classes? The old man asked, still working the mop. Yeah, the welding program. That's good, that's real good. The janitor smiled at him, a warm smile that reached his eyes. Always need good welders. Honest work and you can make a decent living at it. That's what I'm hoping for. You from around here? Southside, Daniel said. Lost my job 3 months ago when the factory closed. Been looking for work ever since, but nobody's hiring without certifications anymore. The old man nodded like he understood. Times are tough, but you're doing the right thing, investing in yourself. That takes courage, especially when money's tight. Something about the way he said it made Daniel think this man knew exactly what tight money felt like. He was a janitor at a trade school, probably making minimum wage, doing work that most people looked right through. But there was something in his eyes. A kindness, maybe, or just an understanding of what it meant to struggle. "I'm Mr. Henderson," the old man said, extending his hand. "Daniel." They shook hands. The old man's grip was firm, the hands of someone who'd worked hard their whole life. The woman behind the desk called Daniel back over. "All set. Classes start Monday morning at 7. You'll need to bring a notebook and wear long pants and closed-toe shoes. No shorts or sandals in the workshop." "I'll be here," Daniel said. As he turned to leave, Mr. Henderson was finishing up with the bucket, preparing to mop another section of the hallway. Something made Daniel pause. "Hey, Mr. Henderson." The old man looked up. "Thanks for being nice about the shoes. Some people would have gotten upset." Mr. Henderson chuckled. "Son, if getting your shoes wet is the worst thing that happens to you today, you're doing all right. You have a good day now, and good luck on Monday." Daniel walked out into the cold Chicago morning with $5 in his pocket and a start date for the rest of his life. He had 6 miles to walk home, but for the first time in months he felt something that almost resembled hope. Maybe things were finally going to turn around. He had no idea that the janitor who'd apologized so sincerely for spilling water on his shoes was the same man whose name was on the building. And he definitely didn't know that this chance encounter was about to change everything. Monday morning came faster than Daniel expected. He'd spent the weekend trying not to think about the $5 in his wallet or the empty refrigerator in his apartment. His sister Rachel had called on Sunday, excited about her biology exam, and he'd lied and told her everything was fine. What else could he do? Tell her he was eating ramen noodles once a day and had already started packing boxes because he probably couldn't make next month's rent? He left his apartment at 5 in the morning. The walk to Henderson Trade School was 6 miles, and he needed to be there by 7. Most people would just take the bus, but bus fare was $2 each way, $4 a day, $20 a week. He couldn't afford that, so he walked. The streets were empty at that hour, just a few early morning delivery trucks and the occasional taxi. Daniel's breath made clouds in the cold air. His sneakers, still slightly damp from the spilled water on Friday, squeaked with each step. He'd tried to dry them over the weekend, but his apartment was cold because he'd turned the heat down to save money. By the time he reached the trade school, his feet hurt, and his nose was numb from the cold. But he was there. 15 minutes early, actually. The building looked different in the early morning light, less intimidating somehow. A few other students were already gathering near the entrance, smoking cigarettes and talking. Daniel went inside and found his way to the workshop. The room smelled like metal and oil, and rows of welding stations lined the walls. It reminded him of his dad's garage back when things were simpler. Back when his biggest worry was finishing his homework before dinner. "You made it." Daniel turned around. Mr. Henderson was there, pushing a cart with cleaning supplies. He wore the same coveralls as Friday, and he had that same warm smile on his face. "Yeah, I made it," Daniel said. "Good for you. A lot of folks sign up for these classes and never show up for the first day. They let fear talk them out of it." The old man started wiping down one of the workbenches. "But not you. You're here." "Can't afford to be scared," Daniel said. "Need this too badly." Mr. Henderson nodded slowly, like he was thinking about something. "You walk here?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to sound pathetic. "Yeah, I live about 6 miles away." 6 miles? In this cold? "It's not too bad." "Good exercise?" The old man stopped cleaning and looked at him for a long moment. "Bus fare too expensive?" Daniel felt his face get hot. There was something embarrassing about admitting you couldn't afford $2. "Just trying to save money where I can." "I respect that," Mr. Henderson said quietly. "Shows discipline. Shows you're serious about being here." More students started filing in, and soon the instructor arrived. Mr. Chen was a short, stocky man with strong hands and safety glasses hanging around his neck. He didn't waste time on small talk. He jumped straight into safety procedures, demonstrating how to properly use the welding equipment, explaining the different types of welding they'd be learning. Daniel absorbed every word. He took notes on a small notepad he'd found in a drawer at home. His handwriting cramped because he was trying to make each page last. Some of the other students seemed bored, checking their phones when Mr. Chen wasn't looking. But Daniel was locked in. This was his chance. Maybe his only chance. The morning flew by. They spent most of it on safety training and basic techniques. By lunchtime, Daniel's stomach was growling so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. He'd skipped breakfast because there wasn't anything to eat, and now he was paying for it. The other students headed to the cafeteria or left to grab food from nearby restaurants. Daniel found a bench outside the building and sat down. He'd brought a bottle of water from home. That would have to be enough. He could eat when he got home tonight. Maybe he'd splurge and add an egg to his ramen. He was sitting there, trying to ignore his hunger, when Mr. Henderson appeared. The old man was carrying 2 paper bags. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, sitting down next to Daniel and handing him one of the bags. Daniel looked inside. A sandwich, an apple, and a bag of chips. His mouth started watering immediately. "Mr. Henderson, I can't. It's just a sandwich. I brought an extra one from home." That was clearly a lie, but the old man said it so naturally that Daniel almost believed him. Can't learn on an empty stomach. Trust me, I've tried. Daniel wanted to refuse. He had his pride, after all, but his stomach growled again, and he realized that pride wasn't going to teach him how to weld. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I really appreciate this." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The sandwich was turkey and cheese, simple but delicious. Daniel couldn't remember the last time food had tasted this good. "So tell me about yourself," Mr. Henderson said, biting into his own sandwich. "What made you choose welding?" Daniel swallowed his bite. "My dad was a welder, worked at the steel mill on the south side for 20 years before they shut it down. He used to bring me to his workshop on weekends when I was a kid, show me how things worked. He'd let me practice with scrap metal." "Sounds like a good man." "He was. Passed away 2 years ago. Heart attack." Daniel took another bite, trying to push down the emotions that always came up when he talked about his dad. "I worked at a factory after high school, nothing fancy, just assembly line stuff. But then they closed down too. Been 3 months now, and I've applied to probably 50 jobs. Nobody wants you without certifications anymore." "Times have changed," Mr. Henderson agreed. "Used to be a man could learn on the job, work his way up. Now everyone wants papers proving you know what you're doing before they'll even talk to you." "Exactly." Daniel felt relieved that someone understood. "I've got a little sister in college. She's studying to be a nurse. Our parents are gone, so it's just us. I help her with tuition when I can, but right now." He trailed off, not wanting to admit how bad things really were. "You're a good brother," Mr. Henderson said. "Taking care of family, that matters. That matters more than most things." They finished their sandwiches, and Mr. Henderson pulled out 2 candy bars from his pocket. He handed one to Daniel. "For later. Keep your energy up." "Mr. Henderson, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." The old man stood up, gathering the trash. "Let me tell you something, son. I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of people come and go. And you know what I've learned? The ones who make it aren't always the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who don't quit. The ones who show up every day even when it's hard. Even when they're tired and hungry and broke." He put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You walked 6 miles to be here this morning. That tells me something about who you are. You're going to do just fine." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't realized how badly he needed someone to believe in him. "Thank you," he managed to say. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you graduate." Mr. Henderson smiled. "Now get back in there and learn something. Mr. Chen doesn't like it when students are late." As the old man walked away with his cleaning cart, Daniel sat there for another moment, holding the candy bar. He thought about his dad, about Rachel, about all the people who were counting on him. He thought about Mr. Henderson, a janitor who didn't have to be kind but chose to be anyway. Then he stood up, put the candy bar in his pocket for the walk home, and headed back to class. He had work to do. The weeks blurred together into a rhythm of walking, learning, and welding. Daniel's hands, soft from months of unemployment, developed calluses. His arms ached from holding the torch steady for hours. His eyes burned even behind the protective mask. But he loved every minute of it. Every morning he left his apartment at 5. Every morning he walked those 6 miles through the Chicago cold. Some days it rained and he'd arrive soaked through. Some days the wind cut through his thin jacket like a knife. But he never missed a day. Not one. The other students started to notice. There were 12 people in the class, and most of them drove or took the bus. A guy named Tommy asked him one day why he didn't just catch a ride with someone. Daniel made up an excuse about liking the exercise, about clearing his head before class. The truth was too complicated to explain. Mr. Chen noticed too. The instructor started keeping Daniel after class sometimes, showing him advanced techniques, letting him practice on the better equipment. "You've got natural talent," Mr. Chen told him one evening. "But more than that, you've got something most people don't have anymore. You've got hunger. Not for food, but for success. I can't teach that." Daniel took those words and held onto them during the long walks home, when his feet hurt so bad he wanted to cry. When his stomach growled because he'd skipped lunch again to save money. When he passed restaurants and smelled food cooking and had to force himself to keep walking. Mr. Henderson appeared at odd times, always seeming to know when Daniel needed encouragement. Sometimes it was in the early morning when Daniel arrived before anyone else. The old man would be there with his mop and bucket, and they'd talk about life, about perseverance, about what it took to make something of yourself. Other times, it was at lunch. Mr. Henderson would show up with an extra sandwich, always claiming his wife packed too much food. Daniel knew it was a lie. He'd seen the old man buying the sandwiches from the vending machine, but he accepted them gratefully. His pride had taken a back seat to survival. "You know what I've learned in my years?" Mr. Henderson said one day as they sat on their usual bench. It was week 4 of the program. "I've learned that character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when nobody's looking. It's how you treat the person who can do nothing for you." Daniel thought about that. "Like how?" "Like how you treat the janitor at a trade school." The old man smiled. "Most students walk right past me like I'm invisible. I'm just the guy who mops the floors and empties the trash. But you? You say good morning, you hold doors open. Last week when I dropped that whole stack of papers, you helped me pick them up even though you were late for class." "That's just basic decency," Daniel said. "You'd be surprised how rare basic decency is." Mr. Henderson unwrapped his sandwich slowly. "I've watched a lot of students come through this program. The ones who make it aren't always the most talented. They're the ones who understand that success isn't just about skills. It's about how you treat people along the way." Daniel didn't fully understand what the old man meant, but he filed it away in his mind. Everything Mr. Henderson said seemed to have layers of meaning, like there was more to the story than he was letting on. By week 5, something shifted. Word started spreading about the student who walked 12 miles a day to learn welding. Mr. Chen mentioned it to another instructor. That instructor told someone else. Pretty soon, people Daniel had never met were stopping him in the hallways. One afternoon, a man in an expensive suit showed up during their practice session. He walked around the workshop, watching students work. When he got to Daniel's station, he stopped and observed for a long time. Daniel tried to ignore him and focus on his weld, but it was hard with someone standing right there. After class, Mr. Chen pulled Daniel aside. "That was Mr. Rodriguez. He owns one of the biggest construction companies in Chicago. He was impressed with your work." "Really?" "He asked about you, wanted to know your story." Mr. Chen handed Daniel a business card. "He said to call him when you finish the program. He might have work for you." Daniel stared at the card like it was made of gold. This was it. This was what he'd been working toward. A real opportunity with a real company. He slipped the card into his wallet, right next to the $2 he had left in the world. That evening, as Daniel was leaving, he ran into Mr. Henderson near the front entrance. The old man was replacing a light bulb in the hallway. "You look happy," Mr. Henderson observed. Daniel told him about Mr. Rodriguez, about the business card, about the possibility of a real job. The words tumbled out in a rush of excitement. Mr. Henderson climbed down from his ladder and smiled. "See? I told you. You show up, you work hard, you treat people right, and good things happen. Maybe not right away, But they happen. I couldn't have done it without you, Daniel said. Those sandwiches, the encouragement, everything. You've been more helpful than you know. I didn't do anything special, just treated you like a human being. The old man packed up his tools. But I'll tell you something, Daniel. You've got 2 more weeks of this program. Don't let up now. Don't start coasting because you've got a business card in your pocket. Finish strong. Show them what you're really made of. I will, Daniel promised, and another thing. Mr. Henderson looked at him seriously. When you make it, when you get that job and start making good money, remember this feeling. Remember what it was like to be down to your last few dollars. Remember the people who helped you, and then help someone else. I will, Daniel said again, and he meant it. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel pushed himself harder than ever. He stayed late every night, practicing welds until his arms shook from exhaustion. He asked Mr. Chen 1,000 questions. He studied the manual until he could recite it from memory. The other students thought he was crazy, but Daniel didn't care. This was his shot, and he wasn't going to waste it. Mr. Henderson continued to appear at random times, always with a word of encouragement or a piece of advice that seemed simple but stuck with Daniel long after. The old man had a way of making you think about things differently, of seeing past the surface to what really mattered. On the Friday before graduation, Daniel arrived early as usual. Mr. Henderson was polishing the trophy case near the entrance. Inside were photos of successful graduates, people who'd gone on to start businesses or land major contracts. Soon your picture will be in here, Mr. Henderson said. Daniel laughed. I don't think they put pictures of every graduate in there. Maybe not every graduate, but the special ones? The ones who overcome something real to get here? Those are the stories worth telling. The old man looked at him with those kind, knowing eyes. You're one of those stories, son. Don't ever forget that. Daniel walked into class that morning with his head held high. Graduation was Monday. His whole life was about to change. He had no idea just how right he was, or that the biggest surprise was still waiting for him. He definitely had no idea that the janitor who'd been encouraging him all this time was about to turn his entire world upside down. Graduation day arrived. With unexpected sunshine, Daniel had ironed his only dress shirt the night before, carefully working around the frayed collar and the small stain near the bottom that wouldn't come out no matter how many times he washed it. His sister Rachel had wanted to come, but he'd told her not to make the trip from her college town. The bus ticket would cost money she needed for textbooks. He'd video call her afterward and show her the certificate. The ceremony was held in the main hall, a room Daniel had never been in before. It was bigger than he expected, with high ceilings and rows of chairs set up facing a small stage. Photos of graduates lined the walls, success stories from over the years. Daniel recognized some of the local business owners, people who'd started from nothing and built something real. Families filled the seats, parents and siblings proud of their graduate. Daniel sat alone in the 3rd row, trying not to feel the emptiness of the 2 seats beside him. His dad would have been proud. His mom, too, if she were still around. But they were gone, and Rachel was 200 miles away, and that was just how it was. Mr. Chen walked across the stage and tested the microphone. The feedback squealed, and everyone winced. He adjusted it and started welcoming everyone, thanking them for coming. Daniel scanned the room, looking for Mr. Henderson. He'd wanted to thank the old man one more time before everything became official. But he didn't see him anywhere near the back where the maintenance staff usually stood during school events. The ceremony began. Mr. Chen called names one by one, and students walked across the stage to receive their certificates. Some got applause from big families. Others got a few polite claps. When Daniel's name was called, he stood up and walked to the stage, his heart pounding. Mr. Chen shook his hand firmly. Top of your class, Mr. Chen said quietly, so only Daniel could hear. You earned this. Daniel took the certificate, the paper crisp and official in his hands. A few people clapped. He looked out at the audience and smiled, even though there was no one there for him. This moment was his. He'd done this. Despite everything, he'd actually done it. He walked back to his seat, holding the certificate like it was made of glass. This piece of paper meant he could work. It meant he could pay his rent. It meant he could help Rachel. It meant his life could finally start moving forward again. After all the certificates were handed out, Mr. Chen returned to the microphone. Before we conclude, I have a special announcement. We have a guest here today, someone who rarely attends these ceremonies but specifically requested to be here for this graduating class. Daniel looked around, curious. Maybe it was someone famous in the welding industry. Maybe another contractor looking to hire. Please welcome the founder of Henderson Trade School, Mr. James Henderson. The room erupted in applause. Daniel clapped too, though he was confused. He'd assumed Henderson was just the name of whoever started the school years ago. He'd never thought about whether that person was still alive or involved. Then Daniel's heart stopped. Walking onto the stage, wearing an expensive navy suit and polished shoes, was Mr. Henderson. Not a different Mr. Henderson. The same Mr. Henderson who'd been mopping floors and buying Daniel sandwiches for the past 6 weeks. The janitor, except he wasn't a janitor at all. Daniel's mouth fell open. He looked around to see if anyone else was as shocked as he was, but everyone else seemed to know who this man was. They were applauding respectfully, like this was completely normal. Mr. Henderson stepped up to the microphone with that same warm smile Daniel had seen dozens of times. But now, in that suit standing on that stage, he looked different. He looked like someone important. Someone powerful. "Thank you all for being here," Mr. Henderson said, his voice carrying easily through the room. "I know I don't come to many of these ceremonies. My staff does a wonderful job and I trust them completely, but every once in a while I like to come down here and see things for myself. Meet the students. Get a feel for who's coming through our program." Daniel couldn't move. His brain was trying to process what he was seeing, but it wasn't working. The janitor was the founder? The man who'd apologized for spilling water on his shoes owned this entire building? "Some of you might have seen me around over the past few weeks," Mr. Henderson continued, and Daniel saw a slight smile cross his face. "I like to spend time in the building sometimes doing maintenance work, cleaning, just being present. It helps me stay connected to what this place is really about." A few people in the audience chuckled, like this was something they'd heard about before. Daniel just sat there frozen. "You see, I started out as a welder myself 40 years ago. Worked on construction sites, built buildings, learned the trade from the ground up. Eventually, I started my own construction company. We did well, better than I ever imagined. And I decided to use some of that success to create this school, to give other people the same opportunities I had." Mr. Henderson paused, looking out at the graduates. His eyes found Daniel in the third row, and he held his gaze for a moment. "But here's what I've learned over the years. Technical skills are important. Knowing how to weld, how to measure, how to work safely, all of that matters. But you know what matters more? Character, integrity. How you treat people when you think nobody important is watching." Daniel felt his face burning. He understood now. The disguise, the questions, the conversations. Mr. Henderson had been testing them. Testing him. "I've had hundreds of students come through this program. Most of them are good people who learn a trade and go on to have decent careers. But every once in a while someone special comes along. Someone who shows up every single day even when it's hard. Someone who walks 6 miles in the rain because they can't afford bus fare but refuses to quit." The room was completely silent now. A few people turned to look around, trying to figure out who he was talking about. Someone who treats the janitor with the same respect they'd show anyone else, even when they're down to their last dollar and have every reason to be bitter about life. Daniel wanted to disappear. Everyone was looking at him now, putting the pieces together. Someone who helps pick up dropped papers even when they're late for class. Someone who says good morning every single day, asks how you're doing, and actually listens to the answer. Mr. Henderson walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at Daniel now. "That's the kind of person we need more of in this world. That's the kind of person who doesn't just learn a trade, they elevate it." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Daniel, could you come up here, please?" Daniel's legs felt like rubber as he stood up. The walk to the stage seemed to take forever. Everyone was watching. Everyone was clapping. He climbed the steps, and Mr. Henderson met him at the top. "You thought I was a janitor," Mr. Henderson said quietly just between them, that familiar smile on his face. "And you treated me with kindness and respect anyway. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." He handed Daniel the envelope. "This is an offer letter. You'll be joining my construction company as a welding apprentice. The starting pay is more than fair, and there's a signing bonus to help you get back on your feet." Daniel's hands shook as he took the envelope. He couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. "But there's more," Mr. Henderson said, his voice louder now so the whole room could hear. I'm also establishing a scholarship fund today. It will cover full tuition for one deserving student every year. And the first recipient is Rachel Peterson, Daniel's sister, who's currently studying nursing. The room erupted in applause. Daniel felt tears streaming down his face, and he didn't even care. Mr. Henderson pulled him into a hug, and Daniel held on tight. This man who'd been testing him all along, who'd seen something in him worth investing in. Your father would be proud, Mr. Henderson whispered. You didn't just learn to weld these past weeks. You showed me you were already built from the right material. Daniel stood backstage after the ceremony, still holding the envelope, still trying to make sense of everything. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. People kept coming up to congratulate him, to shake his hand, to tell him how inspiring his story was. He smiled and thanked them, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Mr. Henderson appeared in the doorway, having changed into more casual clothes. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by slacks and a simple button-down shirt. He looked more like the man Daniel had come to know over the past 6 weeks. Can we talk for a minute? Mr. Henderson asked. They walked outside to the same bench where they'd eaten lunch together so many times. It felt different now, sitting there knowing the truth. Daniel didn't know what to say, how to act. Everything had changed in the span of 30 minutes. You're probably confused, Mr. Henderson said, settling onto the bench with a slight groan, maybe even a little angry. I don't understand why you didn't just tell me, Daniel admitted. Why pretend to be someone else? Mr. Henderson nodded like he'd expected the question. Because people act differently when they know who you are. When they know you have money, when they know you can help them, they put on a mask. They show you the person they think you want to see, not who they really are. He looked out at the street, watching cars pass by. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. A few times a year I spend a couple of weeks at the school dressed like a janitor, just watching. Observing how students treat the staff, how they handle frustration, how they act when they think nobody important is paying attention. That seems like a lot of work just to test people, Daniel said. It is. But you know what I've learned? Skills can be taught. I can teach anyone to weld if they're willing to learn. But character? That's either there or it isn't. I've hired plenty of talented welders over the years who turned out to be terrible. Employees because they treated people poorly. Cut corners, couldn't be trusted. Mr. Henderson turned to look at Daniel. You, on the other hand, showed me something different. I just treated you like a normal person. Exactly, and that's rarer than you think. Mr. Henderson smiled. Do you know how many students I've interacted with over the years? Hundreds. Most of them walk right past me without a second glance. Some are outright rude, annoyed that the janitor is in their way. But you? You said good morning. You helped when I dropped those papers. You apologized when you bumped into my mop bucket, even though it was my fault. Daniel remembered that first day, the water spilling on his shoes. He'd been so worried about wasting his last $20 that he'd barely registered the incident as important. And when I bought you those sandwiches, Mr. Henderson continued, you didn't act entitled to them. You were grateful every single time. You never demanded anything, never expected special treatment. You just worked hard and treated everyone with respect. My dad taught me that, Daniel said quietly. He used to say that how you treat people, when you have nothing, says more about you than how you treat them when you have everything. Your father was a wise man. Mr. Henderson reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. I want to show you something. It was a photograph, old and faded. It showed a young man in welding gear standing in front of a construction site. He was grinning at the camera, his face smudged with dirt, his hands rough from work. That's me, 43 years ago. Fresh out of trade school, first real job on a major construction project. Mr. Henderson stared at the photo with a distant look in his eyes. I was broke, living in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, eating rice and beans most nights. I'd walk to job sites to save money just like you walk to class. Daniel looked at the photo, trying to see the connection between this young man and the successful businessman sitting beside him. One day, the site foreman saw me eating lunch alone. Everyone else went to restaurants, but I couldn't afford it. He sat down next to me and shared his lunch. Every day for 2 weeks, he did that. Never made a big deal about it. Never made me feel like charity. Just treated me like a human being who happened to be hungry. Mr. Henderson folded the photo carefully and put it back in his pocket. That man changed my life, not just because he fed me, but because he saw me. He recognized something in me that I didn't even see in myself. He gave me opportunities, taught me things, helped me get my contractor's license. What happened to him? Daniel asked. He passed away 10 years ago. Cancer. Mr. Henderson's voice was soft. But before he died, I told him that everything I'd built, everything I'd accomplished, started with his kindness. He just laughed and said he'd only bought me a few sandwiches. He didn't understand that it was more than that. It was believing in me when nobody else did. Daniel felt a lump forming in his throat. He understood now why Mr. Henderson did what he did, why this mattered so much to him. I can't pay back what that man did for me, Mr. Henderson said. He's gone, but I can pay it forward. I can look for people like you, people who have the character and the drive but just need someone to give them a chance. That's what this school is about. That's what today was about. They sat in silence for a moment. A bus drove past and Daniel thought about all the times he'd walked instead of riding, all those early mornings and late evenings, all the times he'd wanted to quit but kept going. So what happens now? Daniel asked. Now you start work next Monday at the main office downtown. You'll be working under our head welder, a guy named Patterson who's been with me for 20 years. He's tough but fair, and he'll teach you things you didn't learn in school. Mr. Henderson stood up, extending his hand. You'll make a good salary, enough to get your life back on track. The signing bonus should cover your back rent and then some. Daniel shook his hand, still feeling like he was in a dream. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by being the same person you've been these past 6 weeks. Work hard, treat people right, and when you see someone struggling the way you were struggling, help them. Mr. Henderson smiled. That's all I ask. 6 months later, Daniel stood in front of a welding class at Henderson Trade School. Mr. Chen had asked him to come speak to the new students to share his story. He looked out at the faces staring back at him, some hopeful, some scared, all of them wondering if they'd made the right choice. My name is Daniel, he began. 6 months ago, I walked through those doors with $20 to my name and no idea how I was going to make it. I want to tell you something important, something that changed my life. He saw Mr. Henderson standing at the back of the room, wearing coveralls and holding a mop. A new disguise for a new group of students. Their eyes met, and the old man winked. Treat everyone with respect, Daniel continued. The janitor, the receptionist, the other students, everyone. Because you never know who's watching. You never know who might see something in you worth investing in. And more importantly, treating people right is just the right thing to do, whether anyone's watching or not. After the talk, Daniel walked through the hallways and he made a point to greet the cleaning staff by name, to hold doors open, to thank people for their work. He'd learned that success wasn't just about technical skills or lucky breaks. It was about character, about being the same person in private that you are in public. He thought about his dad, about what he'd say if he could see him now, working a good job, helping Rachel with school, building a life worth living. And he thought about that first day, standing outside this building with his last $20, terrified and desperate. Sometimes the difference between failure and success is just one person who sees your potential and decides to invest in it. Sometimes it's a test you don't even know you're taking. And sometimes the janitor mopping the floor is really the man who can change your entire life. Daniel had learned to never judge people by their appearance or their job title. He'd learned that kindness costs nothing but can mean everything. And he'd learned that the man with the mop might just be the man who owns the building. Those were lessons worth more than any welding certificate, and he'd carry them for the rest of his life.